in attempt to create some kind of logistical structure for what's going on here, we did run across a man named Charlie, who several years ago was forced to start living a more radical lifestyle. He lost his home and managed to purchase a bus, and he's been traveling all over the country in this green bus, and has been on a spiritual path of enlightenment for himself and for everyone around him since that time, cross-pollinating all kinds of ideas from different religions or spiritual backgrounds, trying to find the singular truths that are spoken in all of them, if not in different languages or with different phrasing. The splitting up of religions into all these different, main labels like Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, Islam. I'm sorry. There are common threads among all of these things, and so he's trying to find these things and develop them into sort of a comprehensive human language of consciousness, which, he's certainly not the first, and he certainly won't be the last, but he happens to be here, and we found him. And he has a friend in Brooklyn who runs a spiritual center called the Golden Drum, which we were privileged to go and take a little trip in the bus over to the Golden Drum, and we sat down. There were about 2 dozen of us. We sat in a circle and spoke one at a time, passing a feather, sharing our ideas about what this movement needs in terms of spiritual direction and healing, as many of the people who arrive here. Let me start that sentence over again. There's a fluctuation of energy throughout the day. There are the people who are camping here all night long, which now seems to be including a bunch of the homeless people from New York City, which is kind of cool, because we have a surplus of food, and we are hoping to donate the surplus of food to the homeless shelters anyway, but we've actually just sort of started turning this into, well, a portion of the park is just being taken by the homeless people, which is kind of cool, because, this is their movement too, certainly. So the energy fluctuation goes from, kind of low energy, sort of waking up in the morning, maybe a couple hundred people, to about right now where there seems to be gathering, thousands of people. In fact, I heard the number 35,000 union people were arriving here on Wednesday, which will, to my knowledge, be the largest amount of people that have joined in at one time to this point. There's a spectrum of enlightenment that is here, a spectrum of consciousness, from the people who are most conscious in using the language of consciousness and understanding that this is the direction that we're moving in, even if not everyone is using the same language. And then there are the people who are here who are on the lower end of the spectrum of consciousness, more towards the Wall Street end, which unfortunately I have to identify as perhaps the lowest end of the spectrum of consciousness at this time. So we're trying to move away from that, and we're moving into a system that's based on ethics and humanity and democracy and community. And many people that are here camped out are leaning towards the higher end of the spectrum of consciousness. But during the day, with these influx of people, the spectrum becomes far more broad. And I mean, I can't possibly have a conversation with every person here on where they're at in their level of conscious development. But through my speculations and observations and just kind of seeing the flares of anger and the language that a lot of people are using as they're describing their frustration. It's apparent that while we're all in pursuit of this higher level of consciousness and being able to have a maybe not a government, but it's important that the people here who understand where we're moving, and I don't mean as a movement, I mean as a globe. In order for humanity to survive, more than 100 years, speculatively, we as an organism together must understand that we are one being. We just happen to be one being that is sprawled out through many people across this entire planet. But we are one organism in that, a body is made up of many cells, but we have one point of consciousness. This is the same kind of development that is happening with humanity right now. We are made up of cells of people, but we're tapping into this collective consciousness that is everyone, and understanding that we are all one. And as people come here with different backgrounds, different stories, different frustrations and challenges that they've interfaced that have brought them to the point where they want to come and join in the Occupy movement here. It's important. It's important that we try and educate people with the language of where we're actually going to, and let them know what's actually happening. Because there's lots of different ideas of what's happening, and most are based off of politics and anger. And while that is a powerful incentive to be thrust into the awareness of human consciousness, it brings its own challenges and has a kind of a language that needs to fall away, the language of anger and the language of hate. And so there are many of us here, and this is the point of our meeting at the Golden Drum, who understand where we're headed and are attempting to hold space for people. And we're coming up with ideas so that we can, like, for example, there's so many people here. As you're getting, moved around, we're in a small park, and there are a few trees, and New York is certainly not a place that you can get in touch with nature very well, but part of that consciousness development is understanding that part of the organism that we are as a collection of humans is including the systems that we as an organism depend on. So even human consciousness needs to incorporate the idea of benefacting and stewardship towards the planet, because the planet is something that sustains us as an organism. So we need to have the same, if we're going to respect the organism, we need to respect what sustains the organism with the same amount of reverence. So one of the ideas that we're having is, creating a little sacred space, just maybe a foot in diameter around each tree, where people won't be putting their bags against the tree, and people won't be tying things to the trees. It's unfortunate, people here are trying to be very aware of what's going on, and so trash, there's so many people here, trash becomes an issue. And people are reluctant to throw the trash on the ground. So unfortunately, but kind of symbolically, they throw their trash in the tree. And we're trying to really stifle that idea, because it's a symbol of what is happening here. And so as this group develops and tries to lead everyone towards a more conscious approach of what's going on here, we're trying to create sacred space around each tree. We're not allowed to burn candles here, but we're hoping to get a collection of electric candles just to kind of prove a point, have a vigil and an allowance for spiritualism to sort of